John doesn't subscribe.
Hello everyone, welcome to the last episode of Jurassic World Arizona 2045, at least. Well, it's not the end of the park build, there's still more parks to be built after this, but this is the last episode I'm making on the channel, and not just of this series, this is the very last edited Jurassic Canyon King video. If any of you haven't heard, as much as I love making YouTube videos, it's not something I really have time for. So after this video, there will be still community posts, maybe occasionally live streams. Whenever I finish a park, I'll record a tour of that, but that will probably only be a couple times a year. So yeah, this park is, the series is coming to an end, and the park itself is nearly done after this. There's only 2 builds left. And yeah, the reason this is the last episode is because I realized I never actually built a T.Rex habitat in Evolution 2 on the channel. I've built them before in parks before I had a channel, but yeah, it's been a while and I haven't really done a dedicated T-Rex kingdom. And I was also sort of challenged to build a 10-hour habitat by Evolution Square, and then also it kind of just turned into the idea that maybe several of us will try to build a 10-hour habitat in unmodded Jurassic World Evolution 2, which is a long time to work on one habitat, especially since I'm only counting the time I actually spent building, not just the recording time. I think the total recording time for this was about 13 hours, and about 10 of that was actually building, and I did actually hit the 10-hour mark. So what I'm working on here is just when you exit the monorail that takes you through the lagoon from the plateau, then, oh, it crashed already. So what I did here, you can see I turned down the graphics pretty significantly. I end up turning them back up a little bit later, but I had to turn down the resolution because the park was just crashing. It's got about 70 hours by the end of this build. So, yeah. Anyways, I had this little exit section from the monorail, and then that goes onto this little main street area, which also has viewpoints into the big herbivore valley, and this kind of becomes a 2-sectioned area that's split by the control center, which I actually hadn't used yet in this park because it doesn't really fit the vibe, but it was just too perfect to not use. It's my favorite building in the game, probably. So here I'm kind of offsetting the amenities so that the guests have more room to move, and so that when they walk down this main path, if this is a busy section, they're not totally just blocking everything. Because now they have, room to direct the traffic whenever I need to, which is something that I don't think about enough in my park builds. So then I had this little space back here that I thought was perfect for a miniature staff section to manage the Rex habitat. We're not really doing realism in this park because basically none of the other habitats have these sections, and if this was a realistic park, they would all have one, but I'm just having fun with this build, and it's not meant to be serious as far as how the animals are actually handled. So here I'm creating this little plateau that the gyrospheres will drive across the sort of ridge in the habitat, and that connects right to the aviary, which also serves as a wall for the habitat. And I'll come back to that later. I just wanted to kind of eyeball where that's going to be in the habitat. So this fence is for I realized the path was uneven here. It's a little split off, but I fixed it. And there was a lot of little spaces in here that I filled with rocks and plants, as you'll see when we start decorating, but I think that actually ended up looking pretty good. And I also did a lot of stuff with lights, which you'll see later on better. Here I did a dueling T-Rex skeletons, which, I think I overused the skeletons in this park. I don't like using the same skeletons many times, but sometimes that's just what it is. We only have 3, and they're really, really great decorative pieces, so yeah, it was too perfect of an entrance to not use, the T-Rex habitat sign and stuff, and yeah, now I'm just decorating this random space. Always has to be filled with rocks and plants, and that's what makes it feel much more real. And even though on the desert the terrain brushes are very similar, purposefully using them the different shades of sands actually does a lot for your park if you're building in a desert park. So here, I was actually going to have the control center face the side, but it lined up so perfectly, I actually had it face the other side and have a secondary kind of street on the other end, and that's where a lot of our buildings are. And then from the herbivore habitat view, that path kind of leads around, but you could also walk through the control center. Obviously not actually in-game in first-person mode, you can't do that, but the real guests could walk through the control center, and then they exit onto the street, where then you have your opportunities to actually view the T-Rex. So this is a very long episode, as you can probably tell by the runtime before you clicked on it, because, you know, it's a 10-hour build. I edited it down as much as I can, but I still don't like to cut out a lot from my episodes because I want you guys to be able to see the whole process of the builds. And so yeah, here I'm just kind of sketching out the major landforms for the habitat. I want log viewing galleries because I haven't used them yet in this park. In fact, I don't even know if I've used the viewing dome. I'll probably try to use that later on. And then here I'm setting up how the Jurassic track goes. I'm deleting large portions of it because there's 2 different tracks that go through different parts of the park, but I just needed the track in place so that I could decorate around it just for the part that goes through the T-Rex habitat. So yeah, then I need those gates going from the aviary, which end up actually looking fairly good. And obviously the aviary has a giant hitbox in this game, so I couldn't get the fence as close as I would like. It looks okay once I block it off with decorations, but still not the best. It's always going to be kind of a clunky feature. Hopefully in Evolution 3, the aviaries will be more compatible with the other buildings. So then I'm creating this little airlock space for the T-Rexes, which is going to be their kind of shelter area. As you'll see when I decorate it later, but I was having trouble with the terrain and getting the fences in place here. And yeah, so this airlock would just be open, and then they kind of go into the area where they can be directly managed. Maybe they'd stay there at night. I like having, for these big thought-out habitats, just having multiple sections that serve different purposes. In this one, you know, we just have the 2, but it's still a fairly cool idea. Here, the decoration in this guest section, I think I did fairly good on it, but it does get away from the theme of the park, which is supposed to be very modern, and, you know, I did a lot of stuff like that with concrete barriers and Jurassic Park lights that look like what we just normally do in a park, but this late into a park build, I can kind of get lazy with that sort of stuff sometimes, so that's okay. By the way, there are no cinematic shots on this episode, just because those take forever to edit and I didn't really want to. I did want to make this last video a very good video, but if you guys want to see the full park when it's done, I'll probably be working fairly slowly on this after I'm not making YouTube videos, but I would say probably in a few weeks it'll be done, and I'll upload it to Nexus Mods, and I'll also be privately sharing the save file with people who want it, because I am very proud of this park. It's my first park that I've actually built on PC. So, all things considered, it's fairly good. I am done with the desert biome, though. To be honest, this might be my last park in Evolution 2, depending on whether Evolution 3 releases in June or November, because after this I'm going back to Prehistoric Kingdom for a little while. So, I'm not really sure. But there, what I just did was I created this secondary elevated plateau to look into the herbivore place, because I needed to use that space more than just this flat, open plaza, and also it was just too perfect an opportunity, and the other viewpoint wasn't that good anyways. And I thought it would be a nice place to sit, because you can see a good section of the park from there too. So what I'm doing here is with these little viewpoints, wherever I can, I'm placing the invisible fences as an additional barrier, just for realism and safety. And here I'm doing my overlaid fence trick that I love to use, but it's a little bit clunky when you're trying to place decorations really close to the fence in a park like this, and so I could only end up using it in a couple of places, especially because there's so many curved fences. But yeah, this is right here sped up to nearly 2,000% speed because I placed a lot of rocks in this little ravine, because I kind of have to be consistent with my rock work. So if in some places I do maximum detail rock work, that has to be consistent across the whole park or it looks lazy. And also I kind of enjoy building these because they just look really good when they're done. By the end of this build, we are nearly at 20,000 of Small Desert Rock 1. And by the end of the next build, I certainly will be. So here I'm just using these Jurassic Park walls that I don't actually use that much just because they're such large pieces to kind of block off this section. And even though I turned down the graphics, I was really nervous to delete anything because that was what was crashing the game. I think it's probably the dust effects paired with just having to render them differently and process all that, because the processing power isn't much of an issue for my computer. It's just the graphics at this point. So, you know, we're on the lowest graphics settings at this point, and I think it's at 720p for a short bit I was recording on 480. So yeah, here I wanted some fountains, but I just used these other rock planters to evenly space them out. I guess I could have placed all fountains because they're all the same size, so I don't know why I did that, but there we go. And then I placed some lights around these and some benches because, especially when I'm trying to be really meticulous with the detail, I don't like just placing these single decorations just on their own. It looks really nice to have them grouped, and then it looks more original. Because we only have so many decorations in the game, we eventually come up with our own combos, stuff like this, you know? I could have just placed the lights there, but adding the flags makes them look much more unique. This didn't work out too well because you can still kind of see the path underneath these trees, but it's fine. Honestly, it's a good use of space. And so then I'm just framing the entrance to this building because this is the back of the building. You can very much tell that it's, you know, more for the staff. So I had to do whatever I could to make it look nice for the guests, even though that's fine because the front side of the building is the main attraction. This still needs to look okay. So yeah, that's most of the decoration on this street. I didn't want it to be too crowded because I wanted guests to have room to walk around. Just like in a zoo, especially in a big section like this, you have a lot of unbroken path, which you guys know I don't like placing that in my parks, but I think I did okay with that in this build. Yes, I realize that's uneven. I fix it later on. Just this little cutout in the path in front of the control center. And I placed the T.Rex signs because this is where the guests would exit this building, and then they have this little viewing opportunity into the T.Rex habitat. But you'll see once I start decorating the habitat, these aren't the greatest viewpoints, which is intentional. You're supposed to want to go to the log viewing gallery. And what I'm doing here is, instead of blocking off the sides of the building and stuff, I wanted those to actually be usable. We have like a vehicle garage there and a little office space with, or I was pretending it could be a cafeteria, like in the Jurassic Park Visitor Center. That looks out into there. So I tried to not block those off, which I think actually looks pretty nice, and something I think a lot of us, now that we play this game so much, the buildings just feel like these certain 3D models that we can place down, but I think it's definitely worth it to just look at the buildings and take the time to figure out how you can integrate them and make them look unique, because we don't have enough buildings in this game, really. When you're building a large-scale park, you have to repeat them more than I would personally like. And so just kind of mixing up and integrating the features of the building that aren't even intentional gameplay features is really helpful. Just doing little stuff like that, especially when you then go and look at your park from first-person view. So I had some issues with the terrain here, and it ended up not actually being perfect, which really bothered me where I ended up placing the water. But it could be worse. It's only in one spot that it ended up being left behind. And here the game crashed again when I tried to delete a fence, which really worried me because, you know, we are on really low graphic settings, and thankfully it didn't crash anymore after this. I think I had 3 crashes during this, but they were all during the first half of the build. So that wasn't too bad. And this little area I wanted to be a little kind of cozy seating section. It was perfectly set up for it, especially when I used the brown path. And I really like to think about how the path colors are not just there to within themselves, but how they interact with the decoration that's placed on them, and what their colors do is important. So there I'm creating just the cues for these 2 different gyrospheres, and trying to do something different with each one, but still have a path in and a path out for each. And I like to think those out, which oftentimes is really hard to place those because you have to do like 90-degree angles and stuff. You can't really integrate it into a larger guest area, but I think I did okay with it here, especially because I placed the fences first and did some creative stuff with the path. So here I'm just creating this viewpoint that will look over the Herbivore Valley once that's actually built, and working with the terrain. It was quite a mess for a while. I think everything ended up even there. So here I had some trouble with the path work. This is the areas where I do the worst in my park builds, this kind of weird space that's left over, because I tend to place buildings earlier than I should, and fences, especially on a build like this where I'm working with the map border. It makes it pretty hard to do good path, and I think what I ended up with is okay with me, and from the ground it looks okay. From above it's not my favorite, but a lot of this park isn't. Stuff that I build tends to be made for the ground perspective. So I was going to place amenities here, which would have been nice, but there wasn't really room, so what I ended up doing was a skeleton display, which I don't think I've actually done before, but people do that all the time, and I just don't like doing it because, like I said, I don't like repeating skeletons that often, but I kind of had to here because I didn't really know what else to put there, and I didn't want to just do some pointless decorations like I normally would do to fill the space, some nature or whatever. And it was a good spot for it. This is the T-Rex Kingdom. Even though this is fairly far back into the park and probably a newer section of the park, it's it should probably be a very big guest attraction, which is why there's so much open path compared to the other sections. So here I'm just working on the staff section, which I had some difficulty with because I didn't have space for the buildings I wanted. But I ended up being able to fit a ranger station and a paleomedical facility back here, which was nice because we don't actually have a paleomedical facility in this park otherwise because I didn't have room for it in the main staff section. So yeah, that was pretty nice. Oh, no, I think the game crashes here too. So yeah, that was the third time. And here I'm just adding flags to this because they really do just make everything look better, and I don't think I properly use them until this park. And yeah, I gotta shout out to Jurassic, friend of the channel, because he does a lot of really cool stuff in his park, his Monday Jurassic Park. When I toured that was pretty inspirational for a lot of ways to use decorations that I hadn't thought of before. So here I'm just mixing up, again, the terrain paints actually do really make a difference if you think about it on even the desert, obviously on the other biomes. But yeah, here I'm just trying to do rocks. I tried to use not too many big rocks because I didn't want to block the viewpoint, because I've done that a lot in this park on accidents, because I forget how short the guests are, and even like the smallest decorations in this are quite large. So I ended up using a lot of small rocks here. But just wait till we get to the actual habitat. I cut out probably 30 minutes of rock work in the habitat, and it sped up to 15 times speed most of the time. So I did try to put some ginkgo plants there, but it's inconsistent with the rest of the park, and it didn't look that good anyway, so I ended up deleting those. I did leave them in the ravine, though. Which looks fine, especially once I did decorate this habitat. I think it'll look a lot more natural. So, yeah, we placed so many rocks in this park build. I think this might be the most rocks I've seen in any park. And it's possible by the time this park is done, we'll have more hours in the save file than Unity. Because I think Unity is 92, and right now we're at like 70-something, but it's really inaccurate. I'll have to add up the actual builds to see what we're actually at, but I think it's about 70. Because, you know, it doesn't count when the game is paused. Sometimes it literally just subtracts time, or literally will add several hours. It's not a very good counter, but it's a good approximate sometimes. I haven't spent much time just sitting around in the save file. I think I did during this build because I wanted it to be really good. And especially later on the guest section, I was lacking some inspiration for the decorations because I felt like it was becoming a little bit repetitive, which I still think it is. Right here, I think, is the biggest mistake of the builds. No, not here. Here. Because it kind of... There's the monorail circle with the Metrocanthosaurus habitat on top of the plateau, and if you stand on the ground right where I just placed those two kind of wall planters, you can see the structure behind the control center, but now if you stand there on the ground, those decorations are in the way, and it kind of gets rid of that cool view, and I didn't realize till I was done. I might go back and change that later on. I'm not sure. So yeah, here I just had to do the rocks on the other side. I don't think I went as detailed here, because I didn't want this little area of path that's elevated to feel too separated, because it is still supposed to be part of the same section. So I really like this fountain. I think I overuse it though, so I try to be sparse with the fountains because, you know, I like to have them be kind of... I don't like to just make rows of fountains the way I do with planters. So here's just this little space, just doing some amber, and then I started using these planters, and then I decided it would look cool to kind of continue that around this curve, because these tall planters are really nice as long as you don't overuse them, because they do block the guest view, but I think that kind of works there because of where the gyrosphere queue is. So, yeah. Then I started surrounding this DNA fountain with spotlights and planters, and once I recolor it, this actually looks really good in my opinion. So then this area with the bunker and the two entrances, that goes to the log viewing galleries. I didn't make a queue because I don't think this would be something you need an additional ticket for. It would just be kind of a line. And then I had this random space behind here, so I just made it a storage area because this looks a little bit more facility-like, which makes sense because you're going to have to go through an underground tunnel. So yeah, now I can't really see a preview of what's coming up next, so I'm trying to remember the order that I built this in. I tried to bring back the concrete barriers more in this park because they are one of the best decorative pieces in the game, and I used them a whole lot early on in this park, but I didn't in the last few episodes, just because I think I was tired of them and I was trying out some new stuff with planters that isn't as good. So then I started decorating this lots of trees to make it kind of feel offset and, you know, like you could sit down here and eat lunch. And then I started doing this double road of these planters, which people do a lot, but I usually forget to. It just looks better most of the time, though, unless you're using them for an actual wall. So, yeah, here would have been a great spot to use the darker ground brush. And then I placed a lot of tables there to make it crowded. I don't know why I didn't go back with the darker sand there. That would have looked a lot better. But anyways, yeah, lots of concrete barriers again in this staff section, which I think looks really good once it's done because of how blocky the buildings are, and I don't know, it just works in this specific area. I did have to place a lot of trees on the path here just because I didn't have space for them, and I had to fill those gaps and make sure you can really see into this from the guest section. But there's enough open path that it isn't too much of a problem, especially once it's hidden with like the fluffy bush and the temperate ground plants. It looks okay. So yeah, in this park we mostly use temperate plants because in the lore those are the artificially planted trees here. We don't use any palm trees because that was kind of a personal challenge in this park because I end up placing like 5,000 of them in all my other parks, and I want to do something a little different here. Obviously we still use the desert plants, but mostly for the ground plants because we don't even have good trees from those except for the palm trees. But I still try to use a lot of those ground plants to make it actually feel like, you know, still a desert. And then the Mediterranean trees also work pretty well for the desert and help it feel not too lush with the timber plants because of their coloration. It works. And then I still use some of those alpine trees because there are a lot of those needle-leaf trees in Arizona and the western states. So especially the shorter ones, I try to use a lot, and I think it's a decent palette, even though we're using like half the trees in the game. It works out pretty well. In the actual Rex habitat, I'm not sure what I think of the tree work. I think I placed too many trees because the temperate trees are just like, they have so much volume. They kind of messed it up, but I don't think I'm going to change it because I think I'll get used to it. And it still looks good in the end, but I ended up spending nearly 3 hours. Actually, that's not true. It was closer to 2. On just placing the trees in the Rex habitat because they're all individually placed except for a few ginkgo trees. So yeah, this is the area where the Rexes will stay. They have like the little cages that they can sleep in, which I think is a fun idea, kind of like how, you know, house pets will sleep in kennels and stuff. I think it's kind of funny that the Rexes would have those actually in their enclosure, and they would eventually be comfortable with that. And then they have the their food and water troughs in there. Even though they have water in their habitat they can access, they need it at night too, because if they're cleaning out the habitat and the Rexes are being kept in this section, they're going to need water still. So yeah, here I started working on the skeleton display. I just did 2 of the sauropod skeletons and then a T.Rex versus Spino display. And here I tried to do decorative water, and the terrain was being a huge mess. I got it as close as I could, but it's still a slight bit heightened. They need to fix the water brush in the next game. I understand why it is the way it is, but I think we should have maybe some different types of water. Like we can place decorative water separate from the water animals drink. That would be really nice. And I couldn't get the rock planters to exactly line up, so I just kind of did that with the amber planters. And then I did the crossing over banners trick here, the dinosaurs rule the earth, because I need to break up the space, but since these are tall pillars, it doesn't actually interrupt the traffic flow that much, and I think it looks okay. And there I actually did use the tropical planters, which I've been avoiding using tropical plants here. Here are these aviary perches. I've done this a few times in this park. Kind of be these modern art sculptures. They're not actually working as aviary perches, and it works actually fairly well. I think, at least. You know, might not be for everyone. Just like using monorail structures isn't for everyone. And in general, it's not for me either. But for like the lore of this park, it works. The reason I don't use them normally is, 1, they're hard to actually make look good. Only they work in specific circumstances. And 2, they don't practically make that much sense. But in a park like this, I think it's okay. So yeah, here just customizing the amenities to work better with their seating sections. And I really like making all the shops individual, especially because I have to place so many. it ends up, this area looks pretty good, I think. And then on the concrete fences, those lampposts actually reflect really well off the steel pillars that go between each stretch of fence. So I use that a lot in this build. And here I'm just going with concrete barriers for the queue here, which, you know, it's pretty basic, but I didn't have room for planters, and I think it looks okay, especially since we have those tall planters on the outside, kind of blocking it off, and it creates that contrast between the 90-degree angles and the curving path, especially with the path colors also being different. And you'll see once I add in trees, I think it looks pretty good. And I also made these queues look fairly distinct, even though I also use the concrete barriers here. The way I use the fountains and the trees makes them look fairly different. So yeah, there I just used a few planters just to break it up, because the concrete barriers would look weird in that narrow stretch, and I wouldn't even been able to place rocks in between, so it's a little messy, but it's kind of what I had to do. I actually do have a fair bit to talk about how I build, because I felt like as I'm narrating these series, especially because these episodes are usually quite long, I kind of run out of stuff to talk about in the building process, because so much of it is so similar, because this park has such a theme. But I did a lot of, especially, I kind of took a break from this park after the 24-hour live stream. It was not like a long break, but enough to get out of this pattern of releasing episodes, and I think the live stream also actually helped with that. So you can see how that one ginkgo tree really fixes this whole queue and makes it look really good in my opinion. And then this one is a little bit more lush, but you still get that viewpoint into the Rex habitat, which would probably make people walk really slow through the queue and just stop to take pictures, but that's why I intentionally made it not that great of a viewpoint when I decorate the habitat, and it's a little blocked off, so, you know, they'd still rather take the gyrosphere. So yeah, here I'm doing a little bit more mapping out the gyrosphere route, because it has to go across this plateau, which is something I do a whole lot in Rex habitats. I don't know why it works so well to have the T.Rex kingdom, which it's supposed to kind of feel like the wilds, this huge area where these giant carnivores live, and I kind of was considering blocking off the Black Plateau with a wall of rocks and trees, but it would have looked unnatural, a lot like what I did around the facility section. So I didn't end up doing that, but I think it's a big enough habitat that the effect still generally works. So I really like having this ridge in the Rex habitats in the back that creates a very adventurous feel to have. I wanted this big build up to the tour, and I think I did that fairly well. So here starts the rock work for the habitat. I needed to leave a lot of open space with the lighter sands for the Rex to have it to cross, because they actually have fairly wide traversable areas, which I figured out editing this habitat. I had to delete a fair few rocks and trees so that the Rexes could actually move through most of their habitat. But there's kind of, even though it feels like a big open space, you'll kind of be able to see once it's done, but there's a very specific way the Rexes have to move through their habitats, and it kind of forces them to walk through all those fence windows we made before, because they can't walk past certain points. There's only one place they can get water, which you can clearly see a view from the log viewpoint. So I think this is probably the best thought out habitat I've ever built in this game. Even though I didn't do that much that was really cool. The guest section, at least not on a larger scale, it's not very symmetrical or anything. I do think this is probably the best habitat I built in Evolution 2, and maybe also Prehistoric Kingdom, because I haven't done that many good habitats in that game, because the only thing I've built in Prehistoric Kingdom is the Wildlands, and then I did that little Prehistoric Africa Park, but that doesn't count. Which, by the way, that video, it got like 30 views originally, which was to be expected because it has a really bad thumbnail, and I didn't put much effort into it. But then it is up to 1.2 thousand views, which was actually really crazy and unexpected just recently. That video has done really well, so thank you to everybody who watched that. It's kind of funny to me that literally my most viewed park tour or build is the worst park build. That's not true. It's better than that first series World Park I did on this channel, probably. No, it's not. World Park still took more hours. And yeah, but I sold some cool ideas in that park, I guess, even though they were just terrible execution, which was intentional. The whole idea of that video was that anybody can have fun with Prehistoric Kingdom. You don't have to be an expert at designing things, or you don't have to put 20 hours in every habitat to make it look good. You can still have fun with it and integrate cool ideas relatively easily and effectively, which is why I made that little park. But I don't count that as a full park. So yeah, the Wildlands is the only Prehistoric Kingdom thing I built. So I haven't really done my own prehistoric kingdom park build, which is why after this, I'll be building a park and prehistoric kingdom. I know what it's going to be, but obviously I won't be making videos on that. But every time I build stuff after the end of the channel, I will make a community post with the screenshot so you guys can see what I'm working on and still get inspiration. But then I don't have to edit videos. And so yeah, I'm very excited to be working on that after Arizona 2045 is done, because as much as I love this build, and I do really like this build, I think it's my best build in any game. It's yeah, I'm done with the desert biome. I'm ready to be done with this park, even though I'm very excited for the next build I finally will get to build for that Nostraken and the whole aviary and all that. Actually, I think I'm doing the Herbivore Valley first, but that won't take very long. So yeah, here I'm going back and recoloring some lights. I kind of experimented with it here. I wanted to do some very bright lights, make this very colorful because it's such a big guest attraction, and I just like having fun with the lights. Still mostly following that orange and yellow theme for the main colors, but then that I did with the floodlights onto the wall, that's probably the coolest lighting thing I did in this park, or in this build. I think what I did around the amphitheater was cooler. But anyway, those water troughs that are fountains, I just blacked out the lights there so they don't look like fountains anymore. And here with this wall, I didn't really know what colors to do here. I ended up just going blue and green. I think I could have gone blue and red, but then that would have been too similar to what I did before. And I think it looks okay. So yeah, I liked having fun with lights here. This right here, with the DNA fountain, I think that was a really cool idea. And I really like how that worked. That looks with the DNA. It reminds me of Lego Jurassic World with the DNA coloration in that game, and also just Mr. DNA, except I didn't use yellow there, but I couldn't have it, would have basically disappeared. But yeah, it's super bright in this section and colorful compared to most of the park. So now it's back to more rock work. I don't know why I did that in that order. Maybe I was just taking a break from the rocks, but yeah, here I just did a really quick thing with the fence, and then I was trying to figure out what kind of trees I wanted. I knew I wanted ginkgos, but I tried to try out the I'm not going to try to pronounce them, the one that looked kind of like redwoods, because, you know, it's a T.Rex habitat, but I wanted to do something different, so I didn't end up doing that. And now I'm just going in with the one plant at a time, because I have to do so many, I didn't want to switch back and forth. So I'm going one plant at a time, and I'm starting with this little desert plant that I used a whole lot, and then literally going through every single plant in the palette. Where I think I messed it up was with the medium-sized temperate trees, but it, as I said, it still looks okay in the end. The plants just look overgrouped because they have so many clusters, and you can't see the structure of the Mediterranean trees as well once that's done. But it's okay. I wish we had better aquatic plants and kind of mosses and stuff that I could place around the water, especially in those back alcoves where the water would kind of flow and probably be gross and messy. And, you know, obviously it's not meant to be a wetland, it's still a desert. It's not that lush, but I think I needed to do a lot of those temperate trees because of the viewing logs. This would have been more sparse, but I had to block those off because they look really out of place, which means I had to consistently do same stuff with trees around the habitat, or it wouldn't have looked very good. Wow, there's still 20 minutes left in this episode. So you'll notice what I did was I placed a couple ranger posts in this exhibit because we never use them because they're really just there for gameplay reasons, but I actually think they look really good and make the habitats feel very realistic. And then what I did right here, since I already had ranger team access, I ended up assigning the ranger teams to the post, so they'll sometimes drive through the habitats, which looks pretty cool. And I thought that the staff section looked a little bit sparse, and so I kind of blocked it off, and then also put some clusters here so you can tell it's a staff section from the guest area and that you're not supposed to walk there. So then just going back and adding a few more little details. As I said here before, I didn't want to block this all the way off with concrete barriers because you should be able to walk through that door from the staff section. You should be able to see the seating section from the cafeteria. You should be able to load and unload stuff from that door. So yeah, this is very sped up in this section. I think this is 1,200% speed. Most of this episode has been on 1,000% speed, which is kind of funny. The very first speed builds I did were at 400 and 500% speed, and those episodes were about half the length as these ones have been, and a quarter the length of this one. So it's pretty crazy to see how far that's gone. And I think this looked really good once I added in these little evergreen trees. I may have slightly overused them, but they look pretty good. So, um, yeah, I think it's okay to try to mix trees in ways you don't normally do. And I think I did a decent job with making each habitat feel unique, despite still using the same general themes. And, we don't have a tropical exhibit in here, mostly because you can't really mix biomes in the desert section. It's really hard to do. And also because I wanted it to feel like a real place, all that. But I still was able to make each habitat feel fairly unique. And I really like that section with all the rocks, and especially once I added in the evergreen trees with the water. That looked really good. Probably the section of this I like the most. Here I was trying to kind of crowd all the plants around the gyrosphere tour so they don't see that much, but also I really like the way that feels cramped within the big glass dome that's very geometric, curving above to the right. I think that ended up looking really good. So now I'm going back with Mediterranean trees. Lots of these tall ones, which helped bring the elevation I needed to this habitat. Well, unfortunately, that effect kind of goes away once I bring in the biggest of the temperate trees, which are just as tall. But it was necessary to add some of them to hide the fluffy bushes, which were necessary to hide the structure that these are obviously individually placed trees. You kind of have to do that with the small temperate plants and the fluffy bush, so it's kind of what I had to do to make it work. So it's going to be really fun to ride the gyrosphere once it's done, because it goes really, really close to a lot of these rocks. And I think I subconsciously probably took some inspiration from the T.Rex kingdom. Now that I'm thinking about it, I didn't think of this before, in Crazy Cat Mary's Jurassic World Europe. That's a tropical one, not a desert one, but a lot of the way the individual plants are placed is very similar to what I did here, which I think is pretty natural to do when you're trying to go high detail and, have a tour. But I think I probably took some subconscious inspiration from that. It really helped to tour all of your guys' amazing parks like I did in that one video recently that was like over 3 hours, where I toured some of the best parks of the year. It was really annoying though, because right after I released that video, 2 really amazing parks were published. Caesar Creates Prehistoric SeaWorld and Jurassic's and Jurassic John's Jurassic Park Belgium, which are both great parks, and I've seen them in game. So I wish I could have been able to include those, but it was still a really fun video. And technically, I think Belgium was not released until this year, but it was pretty much done as last year, so I would have included it if it had been before the video was out. But yeah, seeing all your guys' parks really helped. And here I'm adding in Temperate Tree 3, which I thought looked really nice at the time, but because it's such a weird structure, you kind of have to hide it with Temperate Tree 1, which is such a huge tree that it got rid of the structure of those Mediterranean trees, and I had to use it a whole lot to hide the log viewing galleries, which I didn't end up being able to do as well as I wanted, because I did so many little ground plants, but and I couldn't really delete them because that would have crashed the game, except maybe one at a time. But it ended up looking okay. So I'm really excited for you guys to see this park like in your own games once it's done. And the last thing I'm doing is I'm just going ahead and doing the rock wall on the other side, which is inside the dome of the aviary, and doing more of that rock structure that I do with the kind of arms that are coming out, and it's very unique to this park. I don't think I've seen anybody else do that, and it doesn't really work in most places, but in this desert, I think it actually really helps differentiate it from the surrounding environment, which obviously just has the desert texture. So, overall, I think it looked pretty good. Because of the huge hitbox of the aviary, I had to block that off with ginkgo trees, which I think will look better once I actually decorate the aviary. I'm going to be using a lot of evergreens in that. It's going to look pretty cool. I'll post some screenshots of that once it's done. But now it was time to release the Rexes. I didn't want to do any film skins. I wanted to have original dinosaurs. And here we go. Here we have them releasing. We have the green T-Rex with the darker pattern, which I think looks pretty good. The T-Rex skins in this game aren't that good, but there's a few decent combinations, and here's the blue one. I think it's better than just doing kind of sorry, I just lost it. Desert color skins, which sometimes works, but sometimes I like having these very classical dinosaur look. So here I'm just riding the monorail through the lagoon that we built during the live stream, and then that pops out into where we built. And then I'm going to turn up the graphics a little bit so we can tour this on foot. And I'll show you guys the build at night, and then that will be the end of the episode. So yeah, there it is. I think especially once this herbivore valley is filled out, that's going to be a really cool view. And having the really tall aviary really helps for that. So, yeah, let's go ahead and tour this on foot. So here we are by the monorail, and I really like how the really tall plateau kind of frames everything here. It's a lot of rocks, and I think it would look better on higher graphic settings, but it is what it is. Again, I like that you can see some of these lights during the daytime because they're so close to the object they're reflecting off of. And I think this was a good choice of fence here, too. That really barren wire fence that, I don't use that often outside of habitats, but here we go. We get this framing for the T-Rex, which I think looks pretty cool, especially with the purple light. And I like that you can see the roof of the control center, but it's not really, it's fairly blocked like the actual walls of the building for now, which still draws your attention because of the lights and blocks the less appealing side of the building that we have right here. So I'm going to walk around this a little bit quicker. I'm going to speed up, I think. So what we have right here is the John Hammond statue. It looks really nice at night with the orange amber light. And I like how this path, even though you can walk around this planter, it feels a little more cramped over here because you're so near the guest section. You know, you're sitting at the amenities. This isn't the main promenade, but there's still plenty of space to enter the building. And I like that you can see the monorail structure from there. That's a cool view if this bamboo post wasn't in the way. With the monorail, and then the station, and then the Hammond statue. And, you know, here's the staff center, which you could actually walk into. I'm pretending this is a guest building, not actually the staff center. And then that you could also go through there to access the second area. And here you can see into the staff section, but you can clearly see that's what it is. And guests aren't supposed to enter, but we can walk around through here. These supply piles are actually really useful pieces, and I think I tend to underuse them because they're a little bit clunky to place, and we only have 4 of them. I think if you rotate them, though, and don't take up huge swaths of space, they actually are really helpful for staff sections, especially when you have a lot of unbroken path. So, yeah, there's the multi-wall, which I kind of don't like using in this park. I'm going to recolor these Jeeps to the DPG Jeeps because they look more like they belong in a zoo. Just these little bits of rocks and those plants in the corner really helps it feel more real and compact, kind of like you're walking through a diorama. And there's another example of integrating with the building, is just having that little fence there that accesses the place where the dinosaurs are kept if they're being treated. It's helpful. We can go ahead and walk through here. I'm not going to walk through the whole habitat right now, but you can go and see how that's accessed. So this is the area where the Rexes would stay. This fence will stay open right now so they can walk in and out however they want. I did make sure that they can actually walk that way. The backdrop of this is actually a really good map now. Let's expand it. The backdrops of those tall cliffs are just so nice. So yeah, we can actually walk through the habitat more later, and you'll see it properly in the tour. But I'm not doing cinematics episode, as I already said. So I like having that shelter at an angle. I think I've underused that shelter. I tend to just gravitate towards the Jurassic World or the Jurassic Park one for guest section and staff section, but that DFW one is actually quite a nice building. So here we go. The 45-degree angles are actually really nice and for path like this. And I like that the rocks still kind of look like the monorail could actually have a tunnel. It's not just facing through the ground like it actually is. So that's a pretty cool view, especially if you see the train come through. And then we get this winding path that's not, it doesn't have anything too tall around it because it's just the rocks, which is kind of cool, especially since it's right on the corner of the habitat. We get to walk up here, and I like that this is so repetitive and monotonous because it would be like a big area to sit. Even though I don't have much seating, there'd be a lot of people standing, you know. It'd be nice if we had binoculars in this game, like this kind of standing ones that you have at zoos, but we can pretend they're here. And you get to see all the way across the VIP section. You can see the hotel and the amphitheater and the zip lines even. So you can see a whole lot of the park, even though it's not that elevated of a view, which is kind of nice when that works out. Once again, another view into the herbivore area. I like making all these windows because we have so much guest traffic. There's lots of place for them to step aside, sit down. There's lots of things to experience and make this plaza feel bigger than it is. there you can see where the terrain's being a little bit wonky around the water, especially right here. I did the best I could with that, but the decorative water looks so good that I think it's worth it. And especially since I just realized you can see straight all the way from the monorail circle to the T-Rex skeleton to the control center, and then you turn around and you have the decorative water and the When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth all in a row, which is actually kind of nice. And there, the lagoon wall, I like how artificial it looks from this angle, even though the plateau is implied to be natural. I like how it looks like this grand structure that's been built, much like the monorail structures on either side of the hotel. And here you can see what I mean. I think it's pretty effective from the ground view, you know, just having this interaction with the building. And, yeah, it looks pretty nice. And this Jurassic World Staff Center, I don't see many other people use it. I think it's one of the best buildings in the game. Not for its hitbox, it's a little wonky, but it looks pretty good. So, yeah, then we have this little seating section, which is supposed to be very crowded. That's why I have so many tables, and that's why all the umbrellas are open. And so, yeah, that's where you'd enter the lodging guide, but we'll go there later. I just have to walk back this way. No, I already went this way. I'll probably cut some of this out. And now we're back here. I like the strength of that wall with the concrete fences on the curve, especially with how the plants help there. It's sometimes kind of hard to describe what I'm saying, but those of you who are park builders can probably tell what I'm going for. I do really like how this queue turned out, especially with those lights. And the gyrosphere building, it's been a very long time since I've built for gyrospheres, and definitely a while since I've integrated them properly. I like that you can see into their queue, but this is a really nice building. It really works as a wall, and the blue colors look really out of place, but in a good way. They help. So yeah, this is going to look really cool once it's done with, you know, kind of like a tunnel. Kind of like a Lost World kind of thing, where this is where the dinosaurs are on either side, just like these huge industrial walls. I think it's that'll be pretty neat if I decorate the habitat properly. So here you can see into the Rex habitat. Not that great a view, but the Mediterranean tree there really helps this feel a lot more natural. And yeah, just the backdrop of the cliffs makes this all look so much better. If this same park was on another map, it would not look half as good. I mean, obviously not because it's made for the desert biome, but you know what I mean. And then we finally arrive at the gyrosphere, which I kind of like it being blocked by those plants before. And we can't ride the gyrosphere yet, or I don't think we can drive it until the path is complete, which I can't complete the track until I know where it's supposed to go through the Herbivore Valley, which is going to be quite a large area. So let's go ahead and go into the habitat and look through the log viewing galleries, I think. But actually, yeah, I'll just fly over the habitat a little bit so you guys can see it. This back here is very filled with trees, so you can see that kind of path to that section dropped by the water. Here's where the Tyrannosaurs can actually walk, but they pretty much have to walk around the plateau because that little bit is blocked off by that little row of rocks that in real life they could walk by. They're not supposed to be able to get this close to the log viewing galleries, but that's okay. This is actually a nice view, so it's worth it. And especially with the aviary dome in the background, which worked so much better than I expected it to. I didn't mean for it to actually look really good, but it did, especially with the big rock wall there. Using that rock 5 really works there. And I like how long of a view you have all the way back into the tunnel. And here again, the plateau looks really unnatural and artificially built because of the concrete wall of the lagoon, but I think it looks good the way it is there. So overall, I'm really happy with how this habitat turned out. I'll go ahead and show you all the views for this. The Tyrannosaurs seem to be just hanging around this far section of the habitat where you can barely see them, but that's okay. They'll move around eventually, and it doesn't really matter because there aren't guests in this park anyways, so it doesn't really matter where the animals hang out. And this is the area that I think looks the best. There you can see I assigned the Jeeps to drive to the ranger post. I assigned them both at first. I ended up getting rid of one because it turns out they like to constantly drive back and forth, which is a little bit annoying, so just having one Jeep looks a lot better. So yeah, here you can just see this area, I think, turned out looking really good. Even though the Rex can't actually access most of their habitat, it feels like they can. It feels very natural, but there is really this forced perspective of where they walk back and forth that lets the guest actually get a good view of them if they would move from this one spot. So yeah, there's the Jeeps, and here I'm just going to fly up a little bit. This is where the gyrospheres go right by, which I think looks really good because you can very briefly not see the aviary. And so this is what's left. This next section that we started on during the live stream that's not been decorated yet, that's what I'm doing next. And then I'll be filling out this Herbivore Valley, then decorating the aviary. And then that would pretty much be it, except this little section in the back behind the aviary, that is going to be probably a little guest section, unless the park crashes before then, but that's okay if it does, because that section can be left pretty much empty, but then the whole map will be filled out, which is pretty nice. So yeah, I'm really excited for this park to be done, and so I can upload it and all of you guys can see it. I'm really happy with how it's turned out, especially this build. Now let's look at it at night real quick, and then that will be the end of the episode, and unfortunately, the end of making videos, which is really sad to me. I really liked editing this video and just all my videos, and I don't want to drag out this video with talking about it, because I've already made a video on ending the channel, but watch that if you guys haven't. As I said, it's kind of nice to be closing the book, though, and having this channel as kind of like a portfolio of all my completed works, and I think this is a very good last video, because I'm very proud of this build. Probably in 2 weeks I'll think it looks absolutely terrible, because that's always the case in these games. But yeah, and all this is the T-Rex Kingdom. Thank you guys for watching the video. If you're still here after 51 minutes, of the longest video of the series, well, second longest video of the series, you're absolutely awesome. And especially to all of you who have stuck with the channel longer than 51 minutes. Some of you have been here for watching my videos for like 2 years. Well, actually, I don't know if any of you have been here for literally 2 years, because the channel actually just turned 2 years old, like less than a week ago. So yeah, I still have 145 publicly viewable videos, so if any of you are new, those will all still remain uploaded, assuming they don't get copyright strikes. Yeah, I'm still terrible at ending these videos. It's been 2 years, and I still don't know how to do an outro. But that's the fun part, because I just get to talk to you guys, you know? We get to talk about dinosaur parks. It's so cool. Yeah, I just have to thank you guys so much. This channel has meant so much to me. It's been so awesome. Yeah, thank you. I will still be talking to you by community post, but it will probably be a long time until you hear my voice doing narration. Which is sad, but here you can see the park from above. And thank you for watching. And I won't see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.